Hello, podcast world. Welcome to Balance Life Mastery, the show where we talk about all things high performance and life balance without the burnout. Stories, insights, and actionable tips on creating the life you deserve, giving you and your teams the unfair competitive advantage in work and personal life.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Balance Life Mastery podcast with Dina and I. Dina, how are you today?
I am good. My voice is thankfully back just in time for recording this. I was wondering whether we had to do a some sort of muted episode of some sort, or just you.
No one wants that. There needs to be a bit of back and forward. But yeah, maybe it's just like a lot of fluid and just keep yourself going. I was doing a talk the other day, and we got partway through, and one of the guys that arranged it brought a glass over and put it on the table in front of me. I was like, all right, is my voice going? And he goes, no, it was more prevention than anything. I was like, okay. So I thought he was like, yeah, you need a drink.
Clear your throat, Jeremy.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, when the weather's like this, I think a reminder to everyone, high performance habit, drink plenty of water. So.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, we both have water and we will be drinking during this recording. So yes.
So I have, I'm not going to turn the bottle around because we're not getting paid for sponsorship, but I have like my special performance tea and stuff because with loads of ice cubes in today. So yeah, fully on it. But anyway, today, topic I really enjoy and it's actually always gets kind of talked about in corporate worlds, never done very well. But it's one of the best things when we ask people what do they need or what are they lacking, most people say time. So whether you're running your own business, whether you're working in a team, it's that lack of time. If only I had time to work on my presentation, if only I had time to go to the gym, like cook nice food, all this sort of stuff. So today is all about delegation and being a bit smarter about delegation and sort of tearing into a few of the little myths and bits like that people put up as a barrier. So I think it's a really important one. What do you think?
I completely agree. Delegation is something that we don't learn on the go. It actually is something that needs to be taught, and a lot of aspiring leaders, even to be honest, managers, senior managers, even some directors and VPs that I've worked with have zero skill set in delegation. But guess what? There is a power to using other people's help, because feeling stressed, feeling overloaded, feeling like career is stalling, all of that stuff can be answered through a simple skill of delegation, so that your efforts and your focus and your skill set are put to use in the most efficient, effective, and fulfilling way. So 100%. And I think it is overlooked too much in the workplace, to be honest, and for business owners as well, who kind of keep everything to themselves. So yes, hot topic for me, and completely believe in it.
Yeah, well, before we get going though, I want to make an important point that you need to make this note down, everyone. It's like delegation is the passing on of an action. It's not passing on of responsibility, right? So if you delegate slides being created for a presentation, right, it's still on you. So you've had one of your team put it together, it's still your presentation. So whether that's making sure that they do it on time, whether it's reviewing it with them, it's giving enough support to them. Similarly, one of the things that people often miss is like delegation in their personal life. Like delegating, let's say delegating your fitness programming or delegating your food preparation or anything like this, right? It's still your body. So yeah, you're still responsible for, is it the right food for you? Is it the right fitness thing? Because you can't sort of say, oh, I got someone to plan this fitness program for me and it hasn't made any impact. It's like, well, firstly, go find the right person, or maybe it's adherence, or maybe it's like one of these bits. So you can't kind of delegate this task out to someone and expect it to be perfect. It's like, I could ask my kids to wash the car, right? But that doesn't mean it's going to be to my standards, and it doesn't mean it's going to be right, but I've delegated it out. So just remember that.
Exactly. And your efforts are better put to use elsewhere rather than washing your car, unless you enjoy it and you use it as a recharge exercise.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I used to love cleaning my car when I was younger, and now I'm like, I can think of nothing worse. So anyway. All right. So before we get started, just to kind of cover a few of the little myths and traps that I think most people fall into. And firstly, that it's going to be kind of too much time and effort, that, it'll take me longer to explain it to the person and I'll do a better job anyway. And that's a real short-termist view. Well, actually, maybe it's not. It's generally a short-termist view because firstly, what you have to remember is when you're doing a task yourself, you put 1 hour's effort in and you get 1 hour's effort back. But if you delegate it, and maybe it takes 2 hours to show the person how to do it the first time, because you have to run through it twice with them, they will do it ongoing after that. So you had a 2-hour investment and you get hundreds back. The only time that it's not worth doing is when it's a very limited occurrence sort of task. So there is always going to be stuff that is actually more complex than it's worth to hand over, and maybe it's like a very rare event that it has to happen. So but on the whole, I think there's a lot of that. It's I'm better at this than that person. Well, they're never going to get good at it. So yeah.
Exactly. And when we, especially in the workplace, when we're working with bigger teams, part of people's responsibility as managers is to help get people to grow, give people the opportunity to grow and to learn new things. So it's not just about delivering. And this comes from me talking about my own personal mistakes where I wanted to deliver so fast that I would just do everything myself. But that's not fair on the ethos of having a team and building an efficient kind of workforce. So yeah.
And also, you'll then go on holiday and you'll complain that, I went away and nothing got done, and everyone kept ringing me. And it's like, yeah, because you didn't empower them. And actually, it goes to our kind of resilience that we talk about a lot, that if you're not giving people these opportunities to improve themselves, to see if they can do stuff, right, they never will. And if you can delegate all that work out, you go away on holiday and they know how to do things. They don't have to continuously chase you and go after these little helping bits. So yeah, it helps with your mindset as well. So but when you're sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
All I was going to say is, but delegation isn't the excuse to just get rid of the stuff you hate, like to give it or to give it to your mates. Like maybe there's the person you like, so you give them like the really cool task, the person that you don't really like in your team, so you give them the terrible task. It's like, this is organizational development, and it's giving it to the best person for the job that's either going to get the most out of it or is going to do the greatest job for you. So yeah, don't spin the wheel of fortune for who's going to get it. Or I spent too many years, all the jobs got given to the guy that sat outside the manager's office, because the manager could stick their head outside the office and go, hey, got a job for you. And they always got promoted, little buggers.
But you know what? I mean, on that note, I was part of a team at some point in my career where I don't want to say positions here. So the leader of the team wanted to delegate tasks to a certain person. And this person was way beyond his or her depths in the role. The role was new. And that person was really struggling. Yet all of the tasks that no one else wanted to do, guess who they went to that person. And what happened then? That person failed and failed again, and then got put on performance review and then got fired. And that for me is beyond unfair. And I get that people don't perform, and I get that people that there's this process and all of that, but that is, in my eyes, completely unfair and one of the biggest bugbears for me in terms of the corporate world and the politics. But yeah, that's a big one.
It's a real easy trap to fall into, especially on the receiving end, because you want to do a good job. You want to, like, your manager asks you to do something, you don't want to say no, or this doesn't feel appropriate, because most of us just want to fit in, do that job, progress. So
Exactly.
Um,
So aligning with our theme of balanced life, there's only a limited amount that we can do as individuals, no matter how hard we work. And there are only so many hours in the day that we want to work. And there are people who can help. So instead of limiting our success and burning out, what are your biggest tips in terms of delegation and how to really practice that skill so that it becomes the norm?
I think it's kind of, well, there's kind of knowing what to delegate. So it's kind of looking at all the things you do, and it's working out what can you delegate, and by that it's a recurring event that you can I was going to say proselytize. It's not or whatever it is. Create a process from, because it needs to be something that you can give to someone, and you need to be able to give them guardrails, so you don't have to give them all the answers. And actually, in a minute, I'll talk about, there's two types of delegators. So it's kind of working out what can you do, what's the value as well, but it's like, what can you then work on? Because you don't want to delegate the most important things in your life and then do all the menial work. Like the amount of people that don't get a cleaner because it's going to cost them £13 an hour or something, but then because they're having to clean the house, wash the car, do all these things, they're missing out on time with their family, or they're missing out on, starting your own business is quite hard. You have to do a lot of stuff. Actually, do you want to be doing lead generation, or do you want to be doing sales presentations, or do you want to be cleaning the downstairs toilet? It's like, it's easy when you look at it like that, but so often we don't do that time for money kind of analysis.
Absolutely.
So just on that types of delegators, because I always love this one. I used to talk people through it at work, and there's kind of two types. There's a gopher delegator, which basically they basically tell someone, go do this, go do that. So basically they want a runner. So they say, right, I want you to do this presentation. Here's what I want in the slides. Here's the themes that I want. Here's the statistics. Here's all the data we want. Here's the call to action. Here's make sure you use the swipe transition. Make sure you have this and this branding, right? And all they've done is they've told them exactly what to do. So they've told them the exact steps that this person needs to follow. And the person's not going to develop from that, because all they're doing is delivering a task. So they're not actually taking any accountability. They're not taking any ownership. And they'll get overwhelmed, and they'll probably come back with loads of questions, because if you've been told exactly what to do, if there's a bit you're not sure what to do, you're going to go ask, because you're like, oh, you didn't tell me whether you want blue text or grey text, but you've told me everything else, so I feel like I need to know that. So then you end up with like tons of questions back. You've spent loads of time on it. That person's spent loads of time on it. Somehow it's taken more time than if you'd done it yourself. And you go, oh, bugger it, I'm never delegating again. This is rubbish. So obviously that's the bad way to do it. The better way is kind of being a stewardship, or like a steward delegator. And by that, really, you're focusing on the results. It's going to take longer to get going. So if we think about nutrition here, so you want to delegate your nutrition decisions to a nutritionist, right? So you're going to focus on the result. The nutritionist is going to say, they're not going to say, what do you want for breakfast today? They're going to say, what's your long-term outcome? Is it weight loss, sports performance, muscle gain, maintenance? Have you got diabetes? All these things, like what's that long-term focus? It's like, brilliant. So then you set like where you want to get to. And that's going to take obviously a lot longer to get started. But the payoff is huge, because then they can go away and they know exactly what you need, like whether it's feeding you around sports performance, like eating a certain amount of calories before workouts, like so they can do timings and all this sort of stuff, because they've got all this data, rather than kind of having to come back to you continuously and asking a question, or you going, oh, that doesn't work for me because I do a 6 a.m. workout class, but you're telling me to work out on an empty stomach because you said breakfast is at 7 because they thought you worked out at lunchtime. Like, so you can see, if you give them that outcome, give them lots of data, but then let them build the plan, and you then check in with them. Right, it's the same with presentations. You tell the person, like, what's the theme the board need to know about, and what's the outcome, what's the story we want to paint. It's amazing, because then you get the value of that person, like the nutritionist, the person they've developed because they've enhanced their skills and done all this. So totally different way of working, but that's how you do proper delegation and really give yourself that time back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, for me, I've got a kind of, I want to say, maybe I haven't really counted them, but there are a few things I think about if I'm delegating something to someone, a task, and even personal life and in work. And I mean, one of the biggest things I decided to delegate, because I really dislike doing the task, and B, because I didn't have time for it in the day, or it wasn't high on my priorities list to make time for, and that was cooking. But I needed to eat, and I needed to eat healthy. So I went to a meal prep company, and I've delegated that side to get me to eat what I need to eat. And I've done that for years, purely because I would much rather be using my time for other things. Whereas a lot of people do enjoy cooking, which is absolutely fine, right? But thinking on in terms of kind of the workplace or anywhere really, I think the key things are, I made sure that the outcome or the result I'm looking for is very, very clear. And I always give that kind of end goal, and I keep the end in mind when I give out a task or explain or a brief or whatever that might be, so that there's zero room for kind of exploring other avenues. And then I also give the person or the group or whoever the lines of authority and their responsibility and what their boundaries are, basically. So do they need to wait to be told what to do, or are they okay to approach me and to ask me? Or do they need to come up with recommendations, or like, what exactly is the expectation of that relationship? And then one thing that I know I was probably guilty of, but probably because it happened to me as I was much earlier on in my career, and that is, I try to include the people who I'm delegating to into the process. So if there are important meetings about that said topic, I bring them along. They need to hear things and be privy to things and experience things themselves, so that it's not, again, I have to act like the messenger in the middle, and then go and kind of try and communicate that back and forth. So I think those are kind of probably my big things that I try to think about. And then it's that constant check-in, to see whether they need support, whether everything is clear, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool about getting them in the meeting as well, because also that's eventually you can then take that step back and say, because it's a nice, soft, supported handover where they've gone into the meeting, you're now able to come back and again, they know, because you've said, you're not leaving them, you'll have the checkups, they understand what the accountability is. And I think another bit that's really useful is knowing what resources they've got. So can they bring in other people, or have they got to do it themselves? Is there budget to do it? Like, all these things that just help them feel real comfortable about what they're doing. And a bit that I always find key is, with everything in life, being told to do something, especially as a kid, you dig your heels in and say no, especially when your parents say because. So explaining the consequences, both the good and the bad. So this is great at work, because if you sort of say, right, I want you to run this project, if it goes well, maybe there's travel opportunities, maybe there's like, this is the step that we need to do to get you in front of the leadership team so we can get you promoted. So really explain the consequence, but also what's the negative if it doesn't go well. So I don't mean if you don't do this, if you get this wrong, you're getting fired, because you shouldn't be delegating that work. But if it's like, if this doesn't go well, it's going to impact our revenue, or it's going to impact our product launch or software development cycle or something, because it is really important for people to understand that they can't just drop the ball just because they're being delegated to. And it sounds slightly brutal, but it helps focus that mind. It helps you understand, like, why do I need to do this? And I think that's key for your own psychology about, because talking to someone the other day, they were told there was an organizational change happened, and they said that the biggest reason they were sort of thrown off was they don't understand the strategy, they don't understand the why. And they said, and it might be a why that they don't agree with, but at least they know. And it's like that whole psychological safety of, if you know the consequence, you can make a decision. If someone says it's got a massive ramification, like sales here, to escalate faster, because you know how important it is to the business. If someone's because there's nothing worse than going, oh, you told me to do that presentation, I didn't realize it was that important, I thought it was just you wanted some slides together. And they're like, no, the CEO's flying over tomorrow, and now I'm going to have to do it till 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, just having that explanation really helps. And I think we don't do that enough either.
100%. It's that context. Yeah. And I got to a point, I remember, even in my most recent roles, where if I wasn't given a deadline, if I wasn't given something and they're like, Dina, do this, because there's this culture of everything being urgent. And oh my goodness, this is urgent. Can you get to it now? And I'm like, is it really urgent? When's it due? And what's it for? Because let's just agree on that for a second. So yeah, and it's a lot of the time, I think as leaders, we need to make sure that we're super organized to delegate with sufficient time, as opposed to that last minute rush that happens just because we're simply not organized. And I think that's something everyone needs to be aware of.
Definitely. And that's probably a good point around, because we'll do all this delegation, and it's making sure you have a review at the end of it. So you sit down with the person you delegated to, and it was like, how was it? But from both sides, how do we need to operate differently? Maybe need to be clear about what resources were available, the accountability, the escalation, because that's going to build a lot of trust. And also it'll improve your delegation muscle. You'll be able to do it better next time. That person's more empowered, and you're always going to learn stuff. And I think it's anything you do, like getting 360 feedback, just to look at it, is a really, really powerful way to go forward.
Yep, absolutely.
And one pet peeve, hint or tip or something at the end, when you're working out what to delegate, work out whether you can emotionally detach yourself from it, right? Because a lot of people have pet projects at work, and when they feel like they've moved up in the org chart or whatever it is, and they need to delegate this down, but they can't let go of it. So it might be your I don't know, it might be your website, or it might be something, or it might be a certain part of the business that you absolutely love doing. Just be really careful when you try and delegate that out, because what that person doesn't need that's been delegated to is you meddling continuously, like asking what you're up to, how's it going, like, and giving advice and bits like that. Because then you're back to being that gopher where you're still doing the work. They don't feel safe to do the work without your input. And if the person doesn't do a good job, you're going to be really triggered because you could have done it better. And like, it's just those I don't know, there's like these little things that somehow we get emotionally tied to. Like, if it might be a marketing campaign and you're like, do you know what, I loved this was the most fun thing I've ever worked on. Maybe don't delegate it, maybe get people in to help. But yeah, it's just one of those that they can so easily trigger people into negativity, loss, all these weird emotions that are around a task. But still, we're emotional beasts.
We sure are. On that note, I think we've talked enough about delegation, and hopefully these tips are helpful, if not to your professional lives, then possibly in your personal lives, because think of what you can delegate. And there's so much help out there from friends, family, very affordable teams and personnel out there that can help you, whether in business or in life as well. So we're very lucky to be living in a world where things literally are at our fingertips. So think of what it is that's dragging you down, and what it is that you can outsource or pass that task onto. So with that, have a fantastic rest of your week, and we shall speak to you next time.
See ya. Thank you very much for listening. If you like the episode, please subscribe, share it with a friend or a colleague, and leave us a review on whichever podcast platform you're using. We read them all, and it really helps us get the insights and the guidance on where to take the program forward. And also connect with us on social media. Share your journey with us for your high-performing and balanced life. And lastly, remember to take the BalanceQ scorecard. The link will be in the show notes. And BalanceQ, or BQ, is your balance quotient. It's your ability to live this high-performing and balanced life, both in your personal and professional career. And when you take the scorecard, you get actionable insights, you get the steps that you can take to really take yourself on this journey. So with that, we thank you very much for listening, and look forward to you listening on a future episode, and have an amazing day.